Cleveland Guardians outfield, it needs help. So does their lineup. We're not saying anything you haven't heard there before, but what we are doing is seeing if there's just a little bit of hope that the Guardians could go big name fishing for the first time in a while. We'll tell you what that might look like on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bagger of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, friends, everydayers, insiders? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Guardians, the only daily Cleveland Guardians podcast that is covering your team, your Cleveland Guardians, every single day, from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. As part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We got a lot to get into on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Trades, outfield help, investigations, all kinds of fun stuff we'll jump into on today's episode. Before we get there, though, my name is Justin Lada. If you're new here, one of your two co-hosts. I've been co-hosting this show for the last 3 years. My friend and co-host Jeff Ellis, who is off today. And for the last 18 plus years, I have been covering the Cleveland Guardians minor league system. So I've seen many a prospect all the way from draft day to some that have actually already retired, believe it or not. Hard to actually fathom that. On today's show, we will get into the status of the investigation of the closer who will not be named and Luis Ortiz. We'll talk about why they are in the news right now and what to expect. We'll talk about why there is more evidence for the Guardians to make external outfield additions this offseason, whether or not they'll actually do it, but there's evidence they should. But we'll start off talking about going big game fishing for an outfielder this offseason and what the odds are of that actually happening. So before we jump into it, though, of course, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 on any bet. And if that bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today and play responsibly. All right. Promised a out-of-the-box idea for the Guardians this offseason, or this episode, of who they could target. And this is a name people have been talking about for years, and it's just never going to happen. The odds were always slam the door shut. There's no point even talking about it. And I don't even know if the odds are that high this offseason or ever, for a matter of fact. But I do think for the first time, maybe the window has been lifted open. Maybe there's a foot in the door keeping the crack open just a little bit. It's the first time we've seen a little bit of daylight, I think, that this could happen. Not for the Guardians, but for the player in this franchise. And I'm talking about a player everybody would have loved to have 6 years ago, but might just finally have something adding up to be available now the Guardians should consider. And that is future Hall of Famer Mike Trout. I know what you're saying. Really, Mike Trout? Like, the Guardians are never going to do that. And you're right, they may not. But there's reasons for them to do it. And there is some connecting, not evidence, but there are some connecting arguments to be made that why they should do it, why they could do it. Now, again, I'm going to stress this. The odds are very, very low. They might even be like 0.001%. But I think this is the first time there might have been a little daylight between Trout and the Angels franchise for a couple reasons. First of all, the Angels organization is downright embarrassing. People want to complain about the Guardians and their ownership. And look, if you want to complain about certain things, that's fine. I have no issue with that. You can feel how you want to feel about this baseball team. If you spend your time, your money in this team for any amount of significance, then, feel free to do what you want. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about that. But I'm not saying you have to sit there and say, well, at least we're not playing in the mud or the dirt like the Angels are, who have wasted Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout as teammates and didn't even make one playoff series, didn't finish above 500. I know we don't need to sit here and say, well, the bar shouldn't be that low. That's fine. That's totally fine. But the Angels are a sad sack organization. As Jeff has said, they are what a team would look like if the Haslams owned a baseball team. I fully believe that. Art Moreno actually might be a worse owner than Jimmy Hasselman in sports. He is terrible. So starting off with this, and I know this is probably a player or, now a manager that Mike Trout actually likes. They hired Kurt Suzuki, who has never managed a game, has never coached. He is a former catcher who spent 2 years in the front office as a special assistant. Now he's going to be the manager. So he hasn't even coached. At least Stephen Vogt was a bullpen coach for a year. But Kurt Suzuki is well liked by the sport, the players in it. So I'm sure Mike Trout respects him. And this has nothing to do with that. Okay. What this has to do with is the fact that Kurt Suzuki is working on a 1-year contract. And if you've seen the movie Moneyball, you know that the manager was Art Howe, not the real Art Howe, said playing under the cloud of a 1-year contract doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. And Sam Blum from The Athletic said that the reason that Kurt Suzuki is managing for one season, at least in a 1-year contract, is he's tied to Perry Manason, who is their GM, and that Art Moreno doesn't necessarily want to pay a manager in 2027 if there's going to be a lockout. That is so cheap. So cheap. The fact that they are hiring a 1-year manager just for the fact that there may not be a season or may not be a full season in 2027. That is sad. That is very sad. That is where the Angels are. You think you're playing in Los Angeles, and clearly you're not. That's just ridiculous. The other half of this is the first time I've ever seen this. So Sam Blum, also from The Athletic, wrote an article back in September that said, Trout is owed $109 million by the Angels by through 2030, which I know everyone's going to say, yeah, right. Cleveland's never taken that money on. But that also was accompanied by a statement that said there is concern within the organization about further offensive decline. So that means that somebody talked to Sam Blum, who I think is a pretty good reporter, that the organization is concerned about Mike Trout's performance. And you might say, well, then why do the Guardians want him? He's expensive. They probably can't even afford him anyway, and he's declining. Why would you want him? Well, before I get into why the Guardians would want him, because even at his decline, he is still better than anything they've had the last couple of years, let's go into more reasons why there might be some reasons for the Angels to finally move on from him. A, would he be upset about hiring a new manager on a 1-year contract? I don't know if that would necessarily do it, but it is kind of fishy, no pun intended. The other thing is this. Yusei Kikuchi did an interview, and Kevin Pillar, who was on Foul Territory, came out and said that they backed Yusei Kikuchi's claim that the Angels' facilities are very poor. They didn't have air conditioning in their training room. He was working out and getting work done, and the air conditioning didn't work. And then Sam Blum also posted that the Angels are looking for a part-time HVAC employee to work on that stuff. A part-time employee. You're telling me that the most basic thing, having air conditioning in a room where players are lifting weights and stretching and getting work done by trainers, doesn't have air conditioning? It's 2025, man, and you're a billion-dollar organization. Ridiculous. Number 3, and this is kind of a sad thing, the Angels are going through this trial right now where the family of Tyler Skaggs is suing them for wrongful death and, what has been a drug issue. And Trout had to testify very sadly about what he saw go on there and all the people that were in there. And they talked about how there's no real written rules in the organization about certain things that involve showing up to your job and what you are and are not allowed to ingest or be under the influence of. There's no, clear written rule on that. It's a nightmare over there. Is that enough for Mike Trout to request a trade? Because let's be honest about this. Out Moreno is not going to trade Mike Trout on his own because he's blocked trades before. He wouldn't trade Shohei Ohtani. He wouldn't trade a whole lot of other guys before that were not even anywhere near as good as Trout or Ohtani. So he's not going to do it on his own. Is this enough for Mike Trout to request a trade? I don't know. He hasn't shown it before, but I feel like all these things adding up, maybe there's just a little, like I said, daylight between him and the organization, especially now that there's comments in the organization about concerns about his decline and the money they owe him. The other half of that equation is this. If they even do decide they're going to, think about trades for him, I wonder if Art Moreno is going to say, no, if I'm going to trade, I want someone else to take all the money. Instead of him paying down some of Trout's contract to play somewhere else and infuse new talent into the organization like they should have done years ago, he might say, no, you're taking all the money, and I don't care about the prospects. I just don't want to pay a guy to play for somebody else because he's that bad of an owner. It's sad. All right, we'll talk about some reasons why the Guardians still should target Mike Trout, and they have to do with offense and defense. We'll talk about next on today's Locked On Guardians. We're all friends here, so we can be real with each other. And we know that making excuses doesn't solve anything in life. And we've all heard the same ones before, right? It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body needs a little extra boost. It needs that little bit of extra support. And that is where Rougiette can come through for you. Rougiette.com offers fast acting doctor prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Makes it easy to get started. All you got to do is connect with a 100% board certified doctor. It's all online, and there are no awkward waiting rooms, no in person appointments, and it's shipped to your door discreetly. There's no shame in asking for help. Life is too short to make excuses and not live it to the fullest. So visit rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB. And don't forget to use that code LockedOnMLB so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses, start making moves. Thank you for being here with us on today's Locked On Guardians and making us your first listen to every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. Again, shout out to all the everydayers, the insiders, and everybody else who is joining us here as the offseason isn't fully underway yet, but we're getting there. We're 7 games away at the very most, or 4 games away at the least from the offseason officially being here. And we'd love it if you hit the bell on YouTube if you haven't already, so you make sure that you are notified every time an episode is dropped, or we go live for some reason, or we offer a reaction video, whether it's to a game or some sort of piece of news, like maybe the Guardians trading for Mike Trout. And you can also auto download on all of your audio platforms, wherever you listen. So when you're taking your dog for a walk, you're going for a run, you're going to the gym, you're doing laundry, you're cooking, you can catch up on all the episodes of Locked On Guardians because we are here 5 days a week talking Cleveland Guardians baseball all the way up until Christmas, basically. So we still would love to be part of your daily routines as the colder non-baseball months are ahead. All right, let's get back into discussion about Mike Trout and if there's any shred of possibility that the Angels might finally have to trade him. I shouldn't say will, but have to if he requests the trade. I do think it's going to be. I think he has 10-5 rights anyway, so he can veto anything. But this is interesting. So the Guardians should be in a position to do something like this. And I know you're going to say, like, he's going to make $37 million this year. He's going to make $37 million to the end of his contract when he's 38 in 2030. That doesn't mean the Guardians have to pay him all the way through, okay? There's a couple things that could happen here. I don't know if Artie Moreno will agree to pay for him to play somewhere else, even if he does get good prospects, which the Guardians could make that move. I'll talk about some prospects I'd be willing to move for Mike Trout if Artie Moreno is willing to eat the cash, some of it. But Mike Trout might be at a time in his career, like I said, there's a lot of bad things going on in the Angels system, the franchise as a whole. Maybe this is finally enough to say I want out. And he knows, again, he is 34 next year and he's not played a lot. And the franchise is saying he's declining. He hasn't made the playoffs since 2015. They lost the Angels in the first round, or the Royals, I believe. So he hasn't made the playoffs in over a decade. His time is coming to a close as far as competitive windows. And why wouldn't he want to team up with Jose Ramirez, who also needs a running mate and hasn't really had one since Francisco Lindor left? I think that would make perfect sense. And the Guardians, again, we've talked before about this. They don't have a whole lot of money committed. And maybe there is a lockout in 2027. Maybe they do lose a chunk of games. You don't have to pay Mike Trout if they're locked out. They're not paying contracts. So guess what? That money that he's owed in 2027, that $37 million, whatever they may or may not take on, you don't have to pay it. And maybe Art Moreno would like to not have to pay it either. So there is that. Or let's say this. Let's say the Guardians get Mike Trout for 2026 and he comes in and he has a great season and he bounces back to the Mike Trout we've all known. Maybe you can flip him. Maybe you flip him. I don't know. I'm not saying I would love that if he has a great season and we're like, all right, we're going to flip him. But if you go for Mike Trout in 2026, you got a really good chance of him rebounding, playing well next to Jose Ramirez, motivated, and a team that actually has a chance to win because they've won with way less. I don't know. Got to be a better training situation here, right? They don't even have working AC at Angel Stadium. So maybe there's a pairing, a motivation to pair that way. Or if he rebounds, maybe you can trade him that way. Or if things get worse, I don't know. Maybe they can work something out on the money. I think that's the slimmest of possibilities, because Art Moreno, again, is an awful, awful owner. But I think this is the last chance for him to find himself on a contender. And I do think that Cleveland's a good destination for him. But again, Art Moreno has to agree to pay that money. So the other thing is other evidence. I think there's other evidence to connect the Guardians to wanting to upgrade the outfield externally this offseason. I said it on our buy, sell, trade, or buy, sell, hold episode of Locked On Guardians on Thursday. And I said that I was buying the odds that the Guardians will improve their outfield in a significant way in 2026. You can decide what significant means to you, I suppose. But to me, significant means acquiring a player that actually has a chance to make the difference on the field. And I know Jeff didn't agree that that shouldn't be a platoon player, and maybe not. But I do think they'll find somebody this offseason that will make an impact for them and improve the outfield to a point where they haven't been since maybe they had Michael Brantley and others, and Lonnie Chisenhall and Brandon Guyer, when that outfield was actually decent. And they need offense in the outfield. One of the worst offenses in the outfield, obviously. You're going to have Chase DeLauder, hopefully. You're going to try to get George Valera in this outfield, maybe. I don't know. Stephen Kwan won a Fielding Bible Award. It is his third Fielding Bible Award in the last 4 seasons. He was tied for first place in defensive runs saved in baseball with former teammate Ernie Clement at plus 22. The Guardians as a whole finished 7th in baseball at 40 runs saved by the defense. Overall, pretty good defense. But if we break that down by position, the Guardians had plus 22 in left field for Stephen Kwan. In center field, they were one of the worst. They were 7th worst in baseball at -8 defensive runs saved. In right field, it gets even worse. 5th worst in baseball at -10. So not only were your center fielders and your right fielders giving you very little offense, if none, they're also giving you bad defense, according to defensive runs saved. Now, they have traded range for strong arms. So they did lead, I believe, at one point this season, they were leading the league in outfield assists. Kwan is part of that, of course. I'm going to go look that up as we're still talking about this, but the Guardians have decided that it's okay for them to trade that poor defense in the outfield for better arms. I don't know. Chase DeLauder's arm is okay. Valera's is okay. Mike Trout has always had a pretty good arm. He didn't play a lot in the field this year because he was DHing, trying to recover from, all the injuries, get back on the field. And he had one of his worst years in quite some time. His OPS for the season was below 800. And that was, I think, the first time it's been below 800 since actually the first time in his career since his rookie year in 2011. The first year he made his debut. So it was career worst year, which again might be a reason for the Angels to trade him. I'm not having a whole lot of luck finding the here it is, outfield assists real quickly as an outfielder. So the Guardians did finish in first place, 35 outfield assists this year. So outfield arm is important to them, but Trout's got that as well. But Mike Trout, I said that they haven't gotten any offense from center field or right field. He can't play center field anymore. You can't put him out there. It's not going to help his body. And I know you have Chase DeLauder too, who you're going to put him in center field and his body's going to break down. Maybe, maybe not. But we're trying to think out of the box here. We're trying to find a way to get the Guardians some offense and some defense and just better outfield help overall. Mike Trout had a 120 WRC plus this year. Do you know where that would rank him on the Guardians outfield? Where that would rank him? The Guardians outfielders this year, offensively, as a whole, had a 77 WRC plus as an outfield. So even the worst year of Mike Trout's career since he broke into the bigs is still 50% better than the Guardians' outfield offense in 2025. 26 home runs. He had a career high in strikeouts. He still walked at 32%. He still walked almost 16% of the time, so he still walks. offensively, he does the things that the Guardians still like. He doesn't chase. He walks. He does have strikeouts, but he hits the ball hard. Those are things the Guardians have started to shift towards. I think it really comes down to, again, and this is not really saying anything new. This is just thinking outside the box, but it's coming down to the fact that would Mike Trout request a trade? Would they pony up enough money to get the prospects and keep their options open to moving him somewhere? I don't know. Those things are very, very hard to predict. All right, I will give you a couple of names that I would be willing to move for Mike Trout if Art Moreno does decide to pick up some of the salary. And we'll talk about the investigation and why closer who will not be named and Luis Ortiz are in the news on the rest of today's Lockdown Guardians. Week 8 of the NFL season just kicked off, and the NBA season also just tipped off. And FanDuel, we know, has an offer you're not going to want to miss out on. That's going to be leaving real soon. Right now, if you're a new customer, if you have not gotten in the game with FanDuel yet, you can bet just $5. And if that bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use on FanDuel to have a little bit of responsible fun. I got to tell you, I watched some of that Dallas and San Antonio game as we were wrapping up Wednesday night's episode or Thursday's episode overall. And Victor Wembanyama is a lot of fun. So there could be some really fun things you can do on there responsibly to bet with him. The Cavs are playing the Bucks on Friday. There's lots of things to do there. And I think Darius Garland's coming back soon. So you can rest assured the Cavs can make you a little bit of money. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Hey there, if you like what you're hearing on Locked On Guardians, you can join subtext.com/Locked On Guardians to be an insider where we're talking with all Guardians fans and insiders of the program every day, whether it's ideas like this, mailbag questions, any sort of news that's out there, like Daniel Spino hitting 100 in Arizona in his most recent outing. Let them know that as well, along with other things. And we're doing monthly Google meetups as well. We just talk ball. We talk about some things that we can't say maybe on the air publicly. It's a lot of fun. So you can join in on that over at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians. And we do have some news coming your way soon about the program and some things we're adding that I think everyone's going to enjoy a little bit more. All right. So I mentioned before I'd give you some names about who would you trade for Mike Trout. Now, this is depending on how much money Art Moreno would pick up, if any. And let's be clear, too. If Art Moreno does not pick up money in this and he decides to trade Mike Trout for nothing because he wants somebody else to pay the salary if Trout's requesting a trade, the Guardians are out. They're out. Let's be honest. $37 million a year. Yes, they could add that for 1 year. They're not going to take $190 million over the next couple of years. But if Art Moreno's, footing half of that over the next couple of years, I'm very, very leery about trading a guy like Ralphy Velasquez, but this is an instance where I would do it. I think Velasquez, to me, is the third best prospect in the system right now. I'd be willing to trade Velasquez. I don't know that he's enough of a headliner to get you Mike Trout on a deal where he is getting half the money picked up by the organization, because this is the only way we could even entertain this. So I think you'd have to include a lot more. I'm thinking you're going to have to go ahead and trade someone like a Joey Cantillo along with him. You're probably talking, probably Jason Churio, which I'd be fine with. Would it be Cal Steven? Would it be Parker Messick? They need pitching help. All those guys would have to be in the discussion. The headliner here, like I said, I think Ralphie is a top 3 in the system. You're not trading DeWater. Cooper Ingle, they have a catcher, so I don't know that the Angels necessarily interested in Cooper Ingle because they really like Logan O'Hoppe. But they need help. They don't really need a shortstop. They need help, and they're going to need help in the outfield. So that's where Ralphie, I think, would come in, or first base, because Nolan Shawnuel. They can use Ralphie at DH in the future as well. Obviously, Churro would give him something for the future. You'd have guys like Joey Cantillo can step into the rotation right now if they believe in him. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I wouldn't trade Travis Bazzana, obviously, in this instance. I just don't think you could do that. But I'd be willing to give him Angel Hanau if they felt like they really liked him and believe in him too. And that's, to me, giving up a lot too. Maybe they like Braylon Doughty, who's right in their backyard. CJ Kapis, all those guys to me would be on the table if the Angels are footing half the bill for Mike Trout. The only way this could even happen. I'll be curious to see what happens throughout the offseason now that the Angels are on record saying that they are concerned about his offensive performance and all the bad news that's circulating around them right now. If this actually does trigger anything, I don't have any inside info on this. This is just me trying to connect some dots, trying to inject some positivity, and trying to have an out-of-the-box discussion about how the Guardians can improve their outfield and their lineup. All right, let's get into why the closer, who will not be named, Luis Ortiz, are in the news. So you've seen recently, probably, and I think I sent this out to our insiders as well, that both of them, I know at least for sure the closer, trying to get a visa to go play in Venezuela because they were barred from playing in the Dominican Republic this offseason. So let's get some rules straight first. Both players had the right to attempt to play there this offseason because the MLB and the MLB Players Association agreement permits players like this to play in those offseason leagues unless the team has a reason to withhold them, which would be like injury related, basically. The Guardians had no standing for them to block them from injuries from playing for the Dominican Republic Winter League. However, I still think it's very, very interesting this drop at the same time. Literally, the MLB and I shouldn't say the MLB, Major League Baseball and the Dominican Winter League in the Caribbean Series came to an agreement about access to more players and less reasons to restrict them to play in those Caribbean leagues. And a couple days later, they were banned from playing in the Dominican Republic, their home country. Interesting timing. So one of them for sure is at least trying to go to Venezuela and play. And they're both, by the way, they're both suing the Dominican Republic League from banning them from playing over there. So that has nothing to do with Cleveland. However, this agreement that the Caribbean leagues and Major League Baseball came to was that the teams could ban them or bar them from playing in foreign leagues that is not their home country. So the Guardians could not say anything about those two playing for the Dominican Republic teams, but because neither one of them resides in Venezuela, the Guardians had full right to say, no, we're not going to let you play over in a foreign country. They have the right to block you, which suggests the Guardians probably would have blocked them from playing winter ball in the first place had they had the power to do so. Why are the Guardians doing this? And I know a lot of people are saying, well, maybe it's hope that they're going to get him back. And I don't think that has anything to do with it at all. And I know there's a lot of comments out there saying, well, Major League Baseball needs to give them a decision so they know what to do. The Guardians can't do anything right now anyway. The Guardians are already planning their future without these two players. They're operating as if these two players are not going to play for the Guardians or play Major League Baseball ever again. And if they do, they'll adjust. And that could be a good thing if they welcome them back. But even if there was a decision made at this point, again, the Guardians couldn't do anything right now anyway, except for plan. And they're already planning as if they're not there. So they're not holding the Guardians back from doing anything. The investigation is reportedly still ongoing. And even if it's not still ongoing, even if Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball has their answer on this probe, it's not going to be announced after the World Series because they're not going to let it distract from the Angels and the Blue Jays. Two big markets, one that hasn't been there in a long time, that has a star like Vlad Guerrero, Ohtani, who, by the way, also was involved in one of these recently. They're not going to let that cloud it. So forget it. For the next 2 weeks, forget it. Not happening. The Guardians have not been in contact with either pitcher for months at this point, so they have really no idea what's going on. They're allowed to have contact with them, and the fact they haven't shows you, I think, how they feel and why this is happening. A lifetime ban is possible, which means they screwed the Guardians over. Let's be honest. Why would the Guardians help those two players out and let them play somewhere else if they're getting banned for life? They put Cleveland in a bad situation this year. Why would the Guardians help them out? They are under no obligation to let them play. Now, if they are banned for life from baseball, their contracts are null and void. They're not on the roster anymore. They are free to go do whatever they want in other leagues after the fact. They're not blocked from playing anywhere else based on what's going on in Major League Baseball and the Guardians. They won't be a part of it. Right now, because it's the offseason, these two players do not count against the 40-man roster. The season's over. They're not getting paid because players only get paid in the regular season. And as soon as the regular season's over, they go to the restricted list, which means they don't count against the 40. So for the offseason, no matter what happens, these two players will not count against the roster, 40-man roster. Whether they're still having the investigation, whether they are banned and they're completely off, or if they're just suspended or they're absolved, then they're back on. But very unlikely they're absolved at this point. We'll see what happens. But the Guardians are under no obligation to help them. They don't count against the 40. They're no longer being paid for the moment. And again, this was called, it was non-disciplinary pay leave. It's a legal term that says they still get paid. They're not being punished. They're not allowed to work while they're being investigated, and they still get paid. That's not being punished if they're still getting paid. So that time could come to an end, but it won't come to an end for the next 2 weeks because, again, they're not going to let it cloud the World Series. They're not. And they aren't hampering. I know people are saying they owe the Guardians an answer because this is going on too long and they need to plan. The Guardians are planning to go ahead without them. No matter what happens this offseason, they are not going to impact their plans because they're on the restricted list and don't count against the 40, or they're gone forever and they don't have to pay them and they're gone anyway. So the Guardians aren't being held back by anything. It doesn't impact their 40-man roster unless they are absolved, in which case, great. Probably not going to happen. At the very least, they're going to be suspended. They'll figure things out if they're not. But that's where things stand. A lot of other Guardians news going on right now. There is a finalist, a GM, Matt Foreman, for the Rockies job. I wanted to get to that. Didn't have time to do it today. So chances are we'll get into that next week. I wanted to talk about the impact of the Giants hiring Tony Vitello, who is a Tennessee head coach, jumping to Major League Baseball to become a manager, the first time that's ever happened, and how that impacts Stephen Vogt. We'll talk about that next week. I might give you a short video on YouTube about that in the coming days. But Stephen Vogt's extension won't be announced until after the World Series either. So we have time to talk about it. And I will tell you, I think there's going to be an impact from that. So stay tuned for that. Jeff will have you covered on a solo show on Monday. In the meantime, feel free to leave a lot of comments about the Mike Trout conversation. Feel free to give us your trade ideas if you think I'm even remotely in my mind right now in terms of the possibility being here, having even the slightest bit of hope this could happen, or just giving out an idea to ponder on. That's what we want to do in the offseason too. It's not just about what is happening, what isn't happening. It's about ideas to chew on and how you would go about making the Cleveland Guardians better. I don't see anybody else offering up any better ideas. This to me is one of the best ones. It would benefit both teams. The Guardians are not the bad team in the situation. The bad team is the Angels getting in their own way. All right, until next time, thank you for joining in on the conversation. Thanks for being here. Chat with you on Monday, probably over the weekend, as the World Series gets underway with the Insiders. In the meantime, go Guardians, go big game fishing.